Hello everyone, Kieran King here. Now before I begin, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone for helping me reach 1,000 subscribers. It is an honor to make these videos and a pleasure to receive your great feedback. Anyways, let's move on. If you follow the world of finance or even world news in general, in recent weeks you may have come across Evergrande. Now Evergrande is in fact a massive Chinese company, the second largest property developer in China. And it is now on the brink of collapse, being around 300 billion in debt to investors, suppliers and banks. If Evergrande does collapse, it potentially has huge repercussions for China and possibly the globe. Maybe. Today we're going to go back to the start and try to understand how this company got itself in the predicament it's in, as well as what the future looks like. So, Evergrande was founded in 1996 and listed on the Stock Exchange of Hong Kong in 2009, floating their shares and raising quite a large sum of $700 million in capital. So what does it do? Well, its main thing is property development. However, it has its fingers in a number of pies such as electric vehicles, sports clubs, and even theme parks. But let's go back to property. Now for a little background. In China, there are not a lot of financial investment products available to everyday people like there are in the West. Property seems to be one of the only things that people can invest in outside traditional stocks and bonds. In addition, culturally speaking, owning your own place in China is seen as a very important achievement to have. And it also accounts for nearly 30% of China's GDP. So from this you can see that the property market world in China is fairly big. Now in China, property or land is owned by the government and leased out for around 70 years at a time. So how does a property developer like Evergrande work? So there are a few elements to this equation. We have Evergrande itself, we have land leases, we have investors, and we have a bank or banks. Firstly, a company like Evergrande will buy land leases. They then design apartments on that land and then pre-sell those apartments to investors who put deposits down for them, who will wait for them to be finished in order to move into. Evergrande takes those deposits and uses that money as a down payment to borrow more money from the bank in order to finish building the apartments, buy out more land leases to pre-sell more apartments on. So the cycle is they buy land leases, they pre-sell apartments, they take deposits, they borrow more money, finish outstanding projects, buy more leases, and so on, in a never-ending cycle. Well, we'll see about that. Now this model is great for expanding rapidly, but a kink in this mechanism is all it takes to cause problems, and that kink first appeared last year when the Chinese government put in place regulations to limit the amount of debt a company could take on and a limit to what that deposit money from pre-sales could be used for. This obviously impacted Evergrande as it couldn't borrow as much as it could before, and it constantly reduced its cash flow. This means it had less funds to finish apartments for previous investors, less funds to pay back loans to the banks it borrowed from in the past, and less funds to leverage to take on more debt. So in order to make up for this lost cash flow, what did they do? They decreased the price of the pre-sold apartments in order to attract more investors and more deposits. So they sold them at a discount. And we all know that property being sold as a discount doesn't tend to bode well for the economy as a whole, let alone Evergrande. And so you also might be thinking, well, surely they can use the assets that they own, i.e. the apartment buildings, as collateral for more loans from the bank to keep their business growing. Well, yes, and they did that. But these properties that they had on their books did not necessarily have the same value they said they had. Many were unfinished and not liquid enough to be sold for cash. That is one of the main points here. As a result, Evergrande has had to seek funding from over 100 different banks in order to keep afloat, complete their operations, and fulfill their debt repayments. And this becomes harder and harder to do, eventually driving it closer and closer into default. The knock-on effect is that people start to panic about the financial health of the business and therefore do not buy their properties, which in turn cuts off more of that essential cash flow that their business model depends on. So fast forward to now. They have 1.5 million people waiting to move into homes that can't be finished. Not only that, they can't pay back the deposits to these people as they have spent that cash already. Also, it has lots of bond payment deadlines approaching that it needs to pay out on. This is not millions, but billions of dollars that it needs to repay over the next year. Its stock has tumbled about 80% this year alone, and to make matters worse, if it goes into default, it has a knock-on effect for the 200,000 employees it has, as well as the wider 2.8 million jobs that it sustains each year. And if that is not enough, this panic and contagion is spreading and impacting other property development companies who in turn are experiencing turbulent times and property bond prices falling. The big question speculators are asking is whether the Chinese government will get involved with Evergrande to stop this ticking debt bomb from going off. They have already given a bit of help so far, but stated publicly in the beginning that they are not willing to bail them out. Now, analysts are actually comparing Evergrande to the Lehman Brothers in 2008, which was equally as large, had lots of debts, had assets that weren't as valuable as they said they were, and whose government refused to bail them out, which kicked off the global financial crisis. However, on the flip side, Chinese markets are much more insulated and cut off from the rest of the world, which makes it unlikely the effect will be significantly global if Evergrande is allowed to fail. In a recent press conference, Zhou Lan from the People's Bank of China actually said that Evergrande is essentially an exception to the rule, and that any spillover into the financial service industry in China is controllable. But then again, of course, he'd say that. If it is essentially allowed to fail and go into liquidation, there will essentially be a mad scramble for all its assets, which will be sold off cheaply and quickly, with all its connected property investors and suppliers being pushed to the side. Now, this is definitely one to watch play out, and my heart really goes to those millions of ordinary people who have put their hard-earned cash on the line as a deposit for homes that they may never see. China have said that they're going to help these people, however, who knows. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please subscribe to my channel and let me know your thoughts below. Take care everyone, I'll see you all soon.